Hi, I'm Neil Evans with the Harken Tech team. I'm here to talk about a new assortment of blocks we have that feature the Tulip sheave. I have Jeremy McMahon here to help me do that. Jeremy's a part of our engineering team. So Jeremy, can you run us through why we evolved this line of blocks?
Yeah, so many of our largest boat building customers came to us and asked us to help solve two problems. The first was cost, and so what we came up with is a way to reduce some of the components and features. So this is a single piece bent stamped housing, so there's no head post, there's no shackle for swiveling, reduces the part count. And then the second thing that we did to solve for them was they asked to help with a misalignment problem that can happen with some inconsistencies in their manufacturing. And so a tulip sheave is the answer to that. The tulip sheave is the shape of the groove. Instead of being a U shape, it is shaped like the tulip, the flower, so that as the line comes deflected in, it pushes it to the center groove of the sheave. So that helps with the misalignment. It can take 5 to 10 degrees, maybe a little bit more, depending on line size and sheave diameter, misalignment of the block, where a regular sheave cannot do that.
So we're all pretty familiar with foot blocks or cheek blocks and how they're used and mounted on boats. Can you walk us through the applications of the crossover, the over the top, and the mass base block?
Yeah. So first we have the mass base block. You can also consider this just a general lead block, but the most used application will be at the base of a mast, and that's so you can have a 90-degree turn to lead up the mast. Instead of having a swivel block at the bottom that never swivels, you can use this type of block in its place to help with a little bit of misalignment, as well as bringing the sheave as low to the deck as possible. For the crossover, this is a block that we use when you don't always have a permanent need for a turning angle, and so you can put a line around the sheave and lead it in any angle you want, or you could take it off if you wanted to go the other direction. And then the over the top is the opposite of the lead block. Instead of the line going under the sheave and leading up, it goes over the sheave and leads down. The two bent tabs, as you see on the housing, those are there in order to keep the line, since it's going over the top, from ever popping out if it gets loosened up. However, because we needed to make it one piece, we decided to add a feature where you can remove the line by taking it out like that instead of pulling it all the way from one end. This allows, if you ever need to, if you're coming over, let's say, a big feature on a catamaran, you could use this same block for multiple lines if you're only going to use one at a time. You could drop one in, lay the other one right next to it, use it as an over-the-top that leads to the winch, take it out when you're done.
Can you walk us through the installation of the mass base block and the over-the-top block? I know they have a couple unique features.
Yeah, we came up with a pretty cool system to mount these. So with these single piece stamped housings, there are two ways you can mount them. One is you could remove the sheave and the inner race and line the housing up and drill the 3 holes to mount it, and then you can bolt it down. But if you can't remove the sheave, if you're, let's say, going to line multiple of these up next to each other right at a mass base and you can't pull the inner race out, we came up with another application. On the back hole, we have a little washer that can get mounted first that has a little riser on it, and then you can take the block and slide it into place and then mount the 2 holes in the front. That would be instead of removing the sheave.
Can you walk us through what the backing plate on the mass base blocks is for?
Yeah, so this is another, we call this the trim washer. This piece is used on the 2 holes on the mass base block in order to give it some extra strength, as the line, if you feed this through here, for example, the line goes vertical, and so when you pull on this, the entire housing wants to pull up and squish together. In order to keep it spread apart so that there's no pinching of the sheave, we added that trim washer on the front to give it some strength and stability.
So Jeremy, can you run us through the bearing system of these sheaves? Can you show us what's inside?
Sure. Inside the tulip sheaves, we have a sleeve bearing, a journal bearing on the inside pressed in, and then on the outside we use Torlon ball bearings for the thrust load. All of the sheaves get used the same on the over the top, the lead block, and the foot block. However, the crossover, because it's an asymmetric design and doesn't have a, we'd call it a cheek on top, this is a slightly different shape with a wider ball groove on the bottom than on the top. And then there is a big inner race that fits from this flange up, and that's what keeps this whole thing strong and straight when it's being used.
Given this is a newer addition to our line, where would a customer see these for?
Most of the time, they'd probably see them on new boat builds, especially the large catamarans, as they're trying to reduce costs and all the equipment that they're using. Anywhere that you can get away from using a swivel block and go to a fixed direction block, they could definitely be used there. By being a fixed block and without swiveling, you get rid of the swiveling head post and the shackle, or potentially a soft attached loop, but you also get rid of whatever it's mounted to, whether that's a pad eye or a mast collar or anything. These can be mounted directly to the deck.
So do you see an aftermarket for these products?
Yes, I think if you are looking to add an application, maybe another halyard or use for a foot block that you didn't already have, the Tulip sheave variety of product does allow for the misalignment as I spoke about. So it should be a little bit easier to drill and install yourself than you would with a regular product. Another thing is if you're going to add a pad eye to add a block somewhere, if you don't need a swivel application, you can just drill the 3 holes for one of the over at the top or lead blocks instead.